Hey, it's me, Nesser, and welcome to the Nesser Show. On the couch with me today is Angel Arutura, an activist, content creator, and model. In this episode, we dive deep into Angel's childhood as a mixed-race child in Northern Ireland, and we learn more about the growth of our current platform. I hope you leave inspired. Hey, it's me, Nesser. Welcome back to another episode of the Nesser Show. Today, I have Angel Arutura. Yes, with me. Angel is an anti-racism activist educator. She's a model.
Thank you.
A lot of her content is centered around sustainability, wellness, and mental health. How do we do there?
Good.
Did you remember that?
Yeah, I did. But you know what? Not that many people say the model part, so I really appreciate that.
No worries. Got you. We've got whole
everything
here. But yeah, for the people who it's their first time maybe engaging with you, maybe do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and kind of get acquainted?
So I mainly do work on Instagram. I'm mainly a content creator, and it's where's the camera? I don't know which one. Okay. So I'm an anti-racism activist, educator, and content creator, and I kind of started out my work a few years ago around the time of the Black Lives Matter protests. So that's kind of how I got started. Mm-hmm. And I first started out speaking out against racial injustice because I felt like I've been silenced for so long growing up in a 99.9% white country.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
I was silenced because there were so many times I tried to speak out when I was in school, and I actually was silenced by like a locker room full of white girls being like, "It's okay for us to say the N-word."
Wait, no, yeah.
Yes, so I actually was silent.
You've jumped straight into the deep end with that. So
yeah,
can you explain, or if you're okay with that, just walking us through that experience, like that specific one?
Do you know what? The one that I'll always speak out about and like tell people about is I was on the school bus at one point. I think I was like 15 at the time. And remember it so vividly. It was the summertime. I was on my way we had games. I don't know if you have that down south, but it's basically like the last two periods at the end of like school where you're normally meant to have class. Like each year group will have like games. So we'll go play hockey or netball.
Oh, like PE.
Like PE, yeah. And we were on the school bus away to games for athletics. And there was one girl, she was sitting beside me. I wasn't friends with her, but it was just kind of like we all did athletics. Yeah. It was just our little group. And I remember I was talking about racism and stuff. And she said, "Oh, but it's not bad anymore." And this was one of the most privileged of the privileged white girls you could meet. Like white, blonde hair, privileged, very wealthy. And she had the audacity to tell me that racism isn't that bad anymore.
And was that something that you had been experiencing your whole life? So
it was not
as
that.
Angel.
Yeah, but at that, like, I've always experienced racism growing up, but I've never really had like a serious conversation with my friends. But obviously now it's kind of my job, and it's just I'm very comfortable speaking out about it now. But as a child, like, we didn't even have these conversations within our family. So I don't know what it was about that day. Like, I think maybe I'd experienced something the week before and I was just talking about it on the school bus. But this girl said, like, "Oh, racism isn't that bad anymore. Like, it's not." She said it's not a thing anymore. Yeah. And there was another one she was actually my friend, sitting beside me, and she didn't speak up. And I kind of turned to the other girl and I was like, "You can't say that." Like, even then at 15 years old, whenever, like, I'm 22 now, so what was that? Like 7 years ago, where Black Lives Matter, like, that wasn't and if it was talked about anywhere in the UK and Ireland, it was not Belfast. Yeah. So I kind of turned to her and was like, "You can't say that." So I had to experience that, like people throwing the N-word about in the locker room whenever that became popular, whenever that became like a thing. And
so this is pretty much like free college. Like, do you have the same system as like England, where you go to school?
Well, we had like, you do like your 1st to 5th year would be your like
primary school,
like 11 to 16 years old.
Okay.
And then you had upper 6th, which was, or like lower 6th and upper 6th, which was 17 and 18, and that's where you do your A levels.
Okay.
But I don't think that's the same over here.
No, it's not.
No.
And it doesn't seem like it's the same, because they call it like sixth form?
They call it college and stuff like that.
Yeah. So in that in between, like, you're not completely a child and you're not into like college.
Being a fully adult. I wasn't a fully developed human being at that point, but I still
prior to that, had you had experiences with racism that you could call racism?
But at the time, yes, whenever, like, there'd be stuff like me and my sister would go to the playground and ask to play with a group of girls. We were probably about 7 and 8 at the time, and they'd turn to us and be like, "We don't play with black people," and send us on our way.
That's extremely...
But we thought that was normal. Yeah. Like, it wasn't like, I see at the time, nowhere was I like, "Oh, that was really racist." Like, I'm going to tell on you. My sister and I, this is the sad part, because my sister and I were just like, "Oh, okay, fair enough."
Yeah.
They're like, you don't play with black people? Okay, that's fine.
Cool, don't play with us then.
So but we weren't even like angry or
Upset,
sad.
yeah.
We were just like, oh, makes sense. Like,
But on
we were
that
just
day
kinda
it
like,
clicked.
yeah, but that's the only reason it clicked is because we told our mom, because my mom was like, not even told her, my mom was like, why aren't you playing at the park? And me and my sister were like, oh, like, we've tried to play with a group of girls, but they said they don't really play with black people. It's fine, we'll just do something here. My mom was like,
And for context,
that's not okay.
For context, your mother is white.
My mom's white,
Like,
yeah.
very white. Like,
Yes.
not like white passing
White
or
and
whatever.
something. She is
Yeah.
a white woman, yeah. So,
And what was her reaction to that?
well, she went and spoke to the girl's mom
Yeah.
and tried to get it all resolved, and we got ice cream. I don't really know what happened. So I don't know.
It's all good, racism's
I don't
over.
know. But like the girls, like it's just kind of weird because like the mom, my mom would tell me like the mom was in utter shock. She'd be like, "Oh, my kids aren't racist." And
Yeah.
it's like, but something's happened there because your kids have said to my kids that they don't want anything to do with us because of the color of our skin. And then there'd be stuff like we'd be in school, and like for context, my sister and I, there was no like we were the only black people in our environment.
Okay.
And like I know how people can like feel about like because we're mixed race and stuff. I fully understand colorism, things like that, but we were the only black,
And
even
that's
African
literally-
people, anything in our environment.
Yeah.
If anyone wanted to point fingers at anyone,
You were the darkest
we
in
were
the room.
yeah, we were the darkest in the room. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and even throughout school, it was right up until upper sixth or like lower sixth actually, where I was the only black person in my entire like school year.
Yeah.
Like it was just me, like nobody
Do you
else.
think because of that, did you identify as black only at that stage? Because that's what was... Because you are mixed race, right?
Yeah,
And that's-
I am mixed race,
And
yeah.
even what you said, we're going to touch on that a bit later, right? But it's very interesting to me, for you to only have been seen as black at that
Yeah.
time, especially because you were the darkest.
A lot of people don't really understand it, and like a lot of people, especially like even in London, a lot of people don't like the fact that I call myself black. But majority of my life, I've navigated every single space I've went through as a black woman. Like I think it's a little bit different now that I've grown up, and especially the industry that I'm in, where I can certainly say I've benefited from having that mixed privilege in certain spaces. But growing up, like being black, like I was black. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%.
And like, so that was really like difficult. And then, I don't know, like my sister, we would have to deal with stuff like children telling us the reason we're the color that we are is because we rub poo on our skin, but like every morning.
Crazy.
And we had that a lot actually. And like would tell teachers about it, and the teachers wouldn't even care at all.
You did well telling teachers about it, because from my understanding, I don't even like... See, my experience is a bit different growing up in Waterford. Like, I was like pretty much the only black person around for the most part. But where I grew up was very much quite welcoming, that I didn't experience a lot of that overt racism. Also, we had the privilege, like me, my brother, and my family, to be like good at sport and good at school. So like a lot of that like transcended like race. Do you get me? Like you didn't get an opportunity to talk about race because we just, you know, like in school when you do stuff you get accepted, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It was only when we started growing up that I understood that. So for that to be very kind of overt, and for you to know that this is something that I'm fighting from a young age, like especially when it's viewed very differently for you as a mixed race woman right now. Like I said, we'll definitely touch on that. But I just wanted to see how that was for you growing up, because I do think even navigating the world we live in now, in the dichotomy of like as a mixed race woman with privilege and oppression, I think that's quite weird. Do you know what I mean?
It's a weird environment for me to kind of now be in,
Yeah.
because I wasn't always in that environment.
Yeah.
And like it's so different because like I have friends like obviously over in London, and like even I have like one of my best friends, she's mixed race as well, and she said she actually grew up with a completely like different mindset to me. So as I grew up, I wanted to be white. Like I hated the color of my skin. I kind of had that own like internal anti-blackness purely because of the racism that I experienced. And my thoughts were just always like, I just want to be like everyone around me. I just want to be like my friends. I don't want to be different. I hate the fact that my dad cooks Zimbabwean food. Like I hate that. Like I would never bring my friends over to the house if he was cooking Zimbabwean
Your dad
food.
is like fully Zim, yeah.
Yeah. And like I was like, I hate that. Like I don't like my culture. I didn't want anything to do with any part of that. I just wanted to be white. Yeah. And then my friend over in London, she's mixed, but she said she just wanted to be darker, because a lot of her like darker skin friends would just be like, oh no, you're not black. Like so she wanted to be darker because she felt like she wasn't being accepted by the black community.
Diverse
so
culture,
she wanted to be accepted by the black community.
Yeah.
I wanted to be accepted by the white, which is impossible.
Yeah.
That was just never going to happen. But it's just kind of weird to have them I think that's why talking about your experiences kind of helps a lot.
Yeah.
So like people can better understand you, because like I'm so passionate about racial injustice. I think some people can't understand that.
Yeah, why?
Because they're like, you're mixed. And I'm like, no, but hear me out. Like,
Before
hold
the
on.
world became this, I was living in a completely different one. Hey, it's me, Nesser. So sorry to stop this episode, but need to take the moment to encourage you to like this episode and subscribe to Culture Shop. Thanks. I don't know what, I was going to say something when I did that. Guys, just watch it. And that's crazy. One of our questions for you was, when did you notice you were different? But clearly,
from such a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild, because even I was listening to, I forget her name, Kelechi. Do you know her? In the UK, she's, oh, you don't know names.
I don't know anyone.
And she's always quite verbal and outgoing about racism and doing anti-racist trainings and stuff. And she said in her anti-racist training, when she would direct the question to the group, when did you know you were different? And white people would be like, or when did you know you were white? And they'd be like, what do you mean? I don't really think I'm white. Ask anybody in the room that was of ethnic minority, when did you know you were different? When did you know you were whatever color, race,
and everyone has a story to tell.
Everybody has a story. And it's so crazy that you didn't even get to have that story. You were just that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Also, I mean, you're probably used to this the whole time, but I'm still not fully comfortable talking about racism and stuff all the time. Not because I'm not comfortable with the topic, but because I feel like there's so many nuances in it that I don't think that every sentence I'm going to say can fully explain what I'm actually trying to say.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
That's true, yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I don't like it. But at the same time, I'm always very aware of the people I'm speaking to, not to fully label them as only that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if I was a man speaking to you about women's situations, like, to understand that there's a mixture of experiences and lives and stuff like that going on. Do you know what I mean? So then 2020 comes around, everybody is on this kind of wave of speaking up, being an activist and stuff. How did that empower you? Because it seems like what it did, put a battery in your back to kind of be like, okay, now I have people listening to things I've always wanted to say. How did that come about for you?
So it actually started a few years before that, and I'll always talk about this, but it's because I think it was around, I was going into upper sixth, which would have been 2018, I think. And I had relaxed my hair since I was 11 years old, because obviously I was like, I want to be white, I need straight hair. Yeah. Even though I think everybody knows using a relaxer does not give you white people hair. Like, it really didn't. My hair was like
barely
straw.
gives you like black people hair either.
It doesn't know. I don't even know what it is, but it should just not ever exist.
You know the trolls. You know those little troll dolls with the hair used to be straight up. That's
it was
exactly
like straw
what it is.
hair.
Yeah.
I don't know what. To be fair, first time I got a relaxer, my hairdresser took herself off to the bank, and I was just left with my head burning. Yeah. And one of the hairdressers was like, "How long has that been in for?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she was like, "Is it burning?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "We need to wash it."
She's like, "Beauty's pain. I need to be white."
Yeah, I know. I was just like, if I leave it in the longer, I'm gonna have straighter hair. But it just crisped. My hair was just crispy and gross. But anyway, so I relaxed my hair for all them years, and that wasn't for myself. Yeah. Like, I know it's like I wanted to be white, but it was obviously because of
acceptance.
Yeah, for acceptance and because of European beauty standards and everything. And it was actually through watching like the rise of YouTube and black beauty vloggers. I was watching more like natural hair vloggers. They were all from over in America. None of them were from, I don't think it had really become more, it wasn't a conversation over here. So I was watching these black YouTubers grow their hair out and everything. And I was like, I felt that was my first step of being empowered. And like for I don't know what the word is, but I was kind of rejecting that racism from other people. I'm rejecting these European beauty standards. And just from being in my own little bubble of watching these YouTubers, I was like, okay, I'm going to grow out my I'm going to grow out my natural hair. So it actually started in 2018 when I first decided to do my natural hair journey. So I stopped relaxing my hair, started growing out my afro. And it meant that by the time it came around to 2020, I think I decided to do the big chop, maybe a few months before then. And having my afro was very empowering. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that, but as someone who has rejected every single aspect of her cultural identity for majority of her life, to actually finally be at a stage where she could not only just accept it, but also love it and want to embrace it, that was very empowering for me. And then just because I was kind of like already had that first step of empowerment, by the time the Black Lives Matter protest came around, I was just kind of like, okay, like I feel comfortable with who I am. I feel confident being the black woman that I am, the person that I tried to not be my entire life. Yeah. And because I had been silenced like the majority of my life, and I didn't really have that many friends either. because I'd left school and I was just kind of in my own little bubble, and I was like, you know, if I have something to say and I offend somebody, I don't really care because I don't have that many friends anyway. Yeah. And there, like as I said, there was no Black community in Belfast either. It was just kind of like, it was just kind of me. Yeah. I just felt like it was kind of just me. So it took a lot for me to finally be able to speak out. And I think it started out, I released, I always say if you want to reach the people, you have to go to where the people are. And because it was lockdown, like it was, everyone was online. And I just had like a normal Instagram account, like just my mutuals, my friends, and like other people that I knew. And I think I only had maybe about 700 followers at the time. But I literally didn't care. And I don't know what it is, because I can be kind of an anxious person. So I don't know, it kind of opened, like I just kind of tapped into this part of me that I never knew I had. Sat down in front of my camera, recorded a 13-minute video talking about my experiences growing up, why things need to change, why people need to take action. And I just uploaded it, and it kind of blew up and circulated quite a lot, like back home. And that brought a lot of attention to me. And then came time to the protest. And when I turned up to the protest, I was there with like my cousins, my sister, my dad was there. And it was so weird because there isn't a big Black community in Belfast, like a lot of people who had the mic were like white or like other race, different ethnic. But it was kind of very jarring because like I don't want to offend anyone, but like it was like, I was kind of like, I know you're an ethnic minority, but you're not the ones we're talking about right now. So give a Black person the microphone. I think my dad took the microphone first, and my dad was just like shouting a bunch of stuff. And my dad moved to Belfast whenever he was like 19, I think. So even though he's like from Zimbabwe, he's actually lived here the majority of his life. And like my mum and him, like they had their tires slashed, they had like spray paint on their house and everything, like racist words, like telling them to go back home, like they were robbed and everything. Like they've experienced like, I've experienced overt racism, but they've actually really the violence, And like he was freelance for quite a lot of his life as well. So the fact that he was a Black man trying to do freelance work in Northern Ireland.
What type of freelance work?
Hip hop dancer.
Oh, lit.
I know. So
should have brought him here.
But so he would have done that, and then obviously because he was Black as well, like people didn't want to work with him, things like that. And it's not that he wasn't good at what he did; it literally was just because he was Black. So they've experienced the worst of the worst. So when I saw my dad kind of speak up, take the mic and speak up, there was this moment, and like I can always remember, but there was this moment where there was just like a little bit of silence. You know, after someone's finished speaking, and there's that like even half a second.
Everybody just deep in what just happened.
Just a few seconds silence. And I just remember sitting myself, and my heart was like literally like thumping, and I was just like, to myself, I was like, just say it, just speak up. And I literally just started like shouting, speaking up. Everyone all of a sudden was like, huh? Who's this girl? And I was just like literally saying everything I wanted to have said for the past 20 years of my life. And everyone around me was just like, I had my cousins there with me, they were crying. And it was a very, like, see the photos of that day, like they're so powerful, but they're so embarrassing.
Cringy.
Because we're all just like screaming, shouting, crying. But
everybody went and edited in black and white as well.
I know.
It's 2020.
I think
not
they
like
wanted to make it as depressing as possible.
Yeah.
But just through, I know I'd said like it kind of took myself to begin that initial like to speak out. But the only reason I was able to continue speaking out that day was because of the people around me and like having, you know, other Black girls look to me and like they were nodding their heads, crying, and I was like, I just felt like, Angel, keep going because you have a voice. Right now, I don't know how you're doing it, but you're using your voice.
Somebody's connected. People are connected somehow. So. That's amazing as well. And like, I mean, I've chills literally as you're saying that, like envisioning that, because obviously we had that here as well. And I remember like me and my brother traveling up to Dublin around that time. And like I said, my experience as racism wasn't as, I don't want to say crazy or as kind of extreme as a lot of people's in the country. So for me, like yours just sounds like purpose. Like yours just sounds like adrenaline in that moment that it would have hurt more for you not to speak in that moment, for you to take backlash or embarrassment or whatever. And I think that's amazing that your dad did that as well, to be able to kind of, I don't know about, maybe you were gonna speak anyway, but it seems like
I don't think I would
helped.
have if my dad
and that's amazing. Yeah. Like I think that's really helpful to have somebody to look to and somebody to kind of join forces with. How is it in your house? Like, is your dad mainly a vocal person? Like, is he like, was that an unusual platform for him to be on for you?
No. So he talks too much. My dad talks way too much. And like, if my dad was here today, like he'd be talking to every single person in this room. He'd be talking to every single person in this room for an hour each. And he just would literally be like, stop talking to me. But he talks so much, and he's very political. and he's very vocal about what he thinks is right, what he thinks is wrong, which is great, but you don't always have to be vocal about it. Sometimes you can just be like, shush,
and how does your mom balance that? Because obviously as a black woman, as a white woman, and her experiences connected to your dad a certain way.
Yeah.
What about her? Does she obviously will have her own experiences before that, or her own beliefs as a white woman, or would she fully see herself as that? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, well, the part that she would kind of connect with is how it would hurt her whenever we kind of experience racism. She's very aware that racism isn't something that directly affects her, but when she sees it happening to like her husband or her kids, that's obviously going to make her upset.
Yeah.
But she's very aware that that's not the most important conversation that kind of needs to be had. So she'll kind of do her part in a way that, like, in her work, she'd try to be heavily involved with like the making sure that everything, there's only so much I can say about my mum's work, but she'll try to be very involved in kind of making it like an anti-racist environment as she can, because just her work, just kind of what it is, the institution that it is, it's not very committed to anti-racism, and it's not very diverse either. And she recently did a degree as well, like alongside her work, where she wrote her dissertation all about like inequalities and to put an action plan in place to make sure that we can eliminate these and everything. So she's kind of doing her part where she can, and it's something that she's very passionate about as well. And she kind of just wants to support us while we talk about this. Sometimes we'll have conversations and she'll be like, guys, you know, it sounds like you really hate white people and you have a white mom. And I'd be like, no, mom, it's not that we hate white people. Like,
it's not you.
It's not you. Yeah. But she's very supportive of what I do.
But I'm sure, like you said, conversations like that can make her uncomfortable. Like, because no matter how much you're close to it or whatever, it's still she'll walk out and she could be here, you could be here, and you could have two completely different experiences.
Yeah,
right?
And like sometimes it can be a bit difficult because like I'd talk to her about like my natural hair journey, and she'd be like, "Oh, but I never told you guys to relax your hair," and I'm like, "But stop taking it so personal. Like, mom, just understand that everyone else was telling me I needed to relax my hair," stuff like that, or
whether directly or indirectly. Like,
she'd be like, she kind of, when I talk about my experiences growing up, she'll sometimes be like, "Oh, but I tried to protect you, I tried to do this." I'm like, I think that's just her as a mom.
I think that's
rather
just moms
than
in general,
her.
because I can tell my mom something and she'll just start, and I'm like, you have totally made this about you.
Yeah, I think that is just moms in general, yeah.
So you have not seen any other side of this, but that's quite interesting. Right, so we're in 2020, you find your voice, and through that then, you essentially blow on socials, and then that leads you into kind of the journey and environment that you are right now. Do you want to talk me through like how that has progressed since then?
It's like when I first got my platform, it was very quick, and like things have slowed down a little bit, which is fine. I think I'm kind of happy with that, because whenever the followers just came, like they just were, it was just kind of like they were just chucked at me. They're like, I think it's sort of like here's 11,000 followers. I think that was my fastest milestone was like 11K or something like that, and it was just like handed to me, and I was just kind of like, okay, 11,000 people. What do you want me to do with this? I don't know what to do with this. I kind of freaked out.
11K. If you want to come through, just Instagram handle.
11 more if you was gonna come over again. That would be good. But no, I just kind of was just thrown at me, and I was just kind of like, I don't know what to do with it. And a lot of them were from America as well. And Americans are great, but also they're the extreme. They're one end of the extreme, the other. So I was getting like, thank you so much for speaking about this. This is amazing. I love your resources. I love your account, and that was amazing. On the other side, you have you're a monkey, what are you talking about, the N-word in my DMs every single day.
Wow.
But it didn't affect me because, and I don't know why it didn't affect me, but I genuinely was not upset.
You're in your purpose. That's I feel everything you said, for me, that's what it feels like.
Yeah. I think this is what I was meant to do. And like, I'm going to say something which is going to sound so weird, and I don't know if everyone believes in this type of stuff, but like, I think I really manifested this. I don't know how, but like, a couple of weeks before the protest, I can remember I was sitting in the park with one of my best friends, like childhood best friends, and we were talking about what we're going to do when we grow up. And we were just kind of sitting there, and I just said to her, like, "Oh, Charlie, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I just want it to be something important. Like, I want to work for myself. I want it to be really important, and I want to make an impact."
Yeah.
2 weeks later,
that's what.
And I'm not doing what I'm doing now. All of them things.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was something in the air that day, but I do think this is what I'm kind of meant to do, and it's going to evolve and change
into different things.
And it's changed now. Like the work I'm doing now is so different to the work I was doing back in June 2020. But that's just like how the type of work that I do. It's so mentally taxing.
I was literally about to ask, because for me, like, I feel like I was very vocal during that time. One, I had a bit of imposter syndrome in that time, because, like I said, like, I'd be sitting there trying to fight for people, and then somebody else is telling their story, and I'm like, I've never experienced racism to that level. I was like, maybe I'm not the person who should be speaking for this. On the other side of things, because I was the only Black person or one of the well-known Black people in Waterford, Tremor type thing, there were white people who didn't feel like they were racist, that were willing to listen, like, that wanted a voice, and they were all kind of looking at me to it, and I was just like, felt way too much pressure, and I was like, I don't want this to be my identity. Like, I've never felt that the only thing I am is Black. I've only ever been Vanessa, Nesser, Nessa, whatever, but now it's now encapsulated in Black, and that's it. In football, I've done so many things in football. The only articles that I've been on really big platforms is to talk about racism. And I was like, at that stage, I was going into 2021, I was like, I'm not doing another article about racism. I'm not talking about racism ever again. I'm going to do whatever I can in my community to help and empower us, regardless of race. Like, and I was just sick of it. Have you ever felt like tired and just sick of activism and just feel like there's nothing, what's the point?
Well, the what's the point kind of came maybe a year after the protest, and to whenever it kind of started dying down a little bit. And I felt very deflated, and was kind of like, no one's listening anymore. What can I do? I don't know what to do. I felt very paralyzed. And I think there was a lot of people who kind of felt like that as well. And I've still continued it, but I had to take a little break. And I do a lot of like environmentalism work also. And that's just through me being very passionate about sustainability and how the people who least contribute to the climate crisis are the ones that are affected the most by it. And it tends to be communities in Africa as well. So I just feel very connected to that side. And I was at a protest, I think, in October 2021, I was at a protest, and it was a very like protest. Like we were doing a lock on outside Westminster. There was a chance of getting arrested and everything. It was very like hardcore. And I always felt
for climate change, or for racism.
Yeah. So but to me, it's all connected. For that protest, there's kind of the activism community, I think, can be quite toxic at times, because people will tell you that you're not making a difference unless you're doing something extreme, like unless you are getting arrested or putting yourself up to have the chance to be arrested or doing all this extreme. You're not doing anything unless you're being the extreme of the extreme. And I kind of fell into that kind of trap, and I just completely neglected like my mind, my body, because my body was telling me no, my mind was telling me no. It was like, don't do this. This isn't you, Angel. You don't feel like doing this. This isn't your area. Where I best contribute is online. I'm comfortable there, and I feel like my voice is the most effective there. I feel like I can make a change on here. Do what you're comfortable with. And that protest was just really uncomfortable for me. I wasn't told that I was going to be the only Black girl at the protest, or Black person at the protest, which I think is very I think very important.
That's definitely where I was going to go to, because sustainability is a topic that we've kind of touched on this season already. But I think for you, I want to kind of pick your brain a little in the sense of how that intersectionality works with like people of ethnic minority, the Black community, Africans, Africa itself. How do you see that connection?
I think it's less like, so the connection for me is just because I've been kind of brought up, like even through school, geography is one of my favorite subjects. So the intersection for me was very personal. Like it just so happens that I'm a Black woman who's very passionate about the planet, but also my dad would tell me stuff like of all the environmental disasters that would happen in Africa and Zimbabwe, and then you'd hear about like fast fashion as well, and like the resale markets in Ghana and how like all this stuff. So for me, just through being like, I just kind of have the thought of the planet in my mind, like kind of at all times, just because I think climate change is something that everyone should kind of care about. And then also the anti-racism aspect of it, it didn't make sense for me to not put the two together. It just, I know for a lot of white environmentalists, they don't even think about the anti-racism side of it, but for me, I didn't even, it wasn't difficult for me to kind of make that intersection between the two. It was just kind of like, anti-racism and climate crisis, like put it together, it just kind of made sense. But the hard part for me is, I think, like intersectional environmentalism, we're still working on it. It's, as I said, at that protest, I was the only Black person at that protest, which would have maybe been fine if I had been told about it. But the fact that no one thought that would be something to even talk about, for me, that's an issue. And that was in October 2021. And the fact that no one thought Angel's going to be the only black person here. We should maybe have a conversation about her, with her about it, let her know, because I'll have a completely different experience.
Yeah.
Even because we had the chance of getting arrested, and they always knew that. And the fact that no one it was a certain organisation, and it was a big environmental organisation as well. The fact that no one in that organisation thought to...
Because they don't. Like, it's the same thing with
they don't.
feminism. Like the feminism that some people are fighting for is not the feminism that others are fighting for. And I think, like, even in the messaging of climate change here, right, talking about fast fashion, talking about sustainability, we've had reduce, reuse, recycle, water conservation, energy conservation, like, the effects of climate change for people in the global south or east as well is basically life or death.
Yeah.
Like, for us, it's pretty much prolonging life or, like, quality of life here, but there it's a literal
There's people
life
dying
or death.
right now.
Like, floods, droughts, all of that, like, the way they get the money, the way that the country works, like, economy-wise, is, like, completely changed. The infrastructure is completely changed, like because they can't grow the things that the global north needs to sustain itself.
We're living a completely unsustainable lifestyle, and it's like, I think no one's really willing to give that up. And it's like things like fast fashion. It's like it sounds so simple, like you really don't need that many clothes. And I'd have friends who'd be like, oh, but Angel, like, I can't afford this, so I have to buy Shein. And I'm like, I have friends that would do like £300 orders on Shein, and I'm like, you don't need that. No one needs that many clothes. And it's like, if you're paying £300 for clothes on Shein, you can, like, a good pair of jeans can cost you maybe like £80-90 or something. Like, I got a really good pair of denim jeans for like £90. They're gonna last me a really long time because they're a really good pair of denim jeans. And it's just kind of things like that. And I just think a lot of it is just excuses, people not willing to give up that lifestyle.
Devil's advocate, right? What if I don't want to pay £90 for a pair of jeans? What if I don't actually, like, I understand you're saying the people who, like, there's a different conversation because in everything there's privilege.
Yeah.
Every single thing there's privilege, right? Depending on what that privilege is, whether it's class, whether it's sex, whether it's race, right? In this situation, on our side of the world, right? Talking and looking at our society, the first thing people will come to is economic crisis.
Yeah.
Why should I spend £90 on a pair of jeans that will last me really long when I might not have enough to even pay my energy bill?
I think the difference is if, like, you'd already be spending that 90. Like, so the thing is, as I said, like, I have the friends who would spend £300 on Shein orders. It's like, if you're in a cost of living crisis, you're not putting the £300. So it's a lot of people who would say, I completely understand the buying clothes to be cost effective, but the people driving the fast fashion industry aren't people that are struggling. It really isn't. It's not. It's people who have the disposable income. You just don't want. I think it's people wanting more clothes for their money. That's the issue, rather than the cost of the clothes. 100%. It's, I want more clothes. I want more. It's this, like, overconsumption. It's this greed that, and it's like that people not wanting to sacrifice that. Like, I literally rewear this. I think wear this outfit all the time. I wear the same outfit pretty much all the time. If I go to a conference or if I do a panel or something, literally I'm wearing same clothes all the time. That freaks other people out. And it's like, you just need to
moving like a cartoon character, you know.
And I'm just like, literally, and I just have, it's like my little uniform or something, but like, it's not that bad. Like, I have clothes, but like, no, I know, but like 5 outfits. A lot of people aren't like, if people go to a wedding, they're like, I need a new outfit for this wedding. I'm like, no, you don't.
I think it's definitely just shifting your mindset, right?
It is just shifting mindset.
Understanding what you need and also understanding what's possible. Because the first thing that you're going to look at, like I said, the first thing, like, anybody will hear who's not that way inclined is limitations, right? I think the difference is now sharing a message that it's not a limited mindset that we're living in. It's actually one sustainable. Why sustainable? Giving the rationale for that, right? But even sticking in the sense of climate change and racial awareness, like, what's one thing that you're finding is helpful or you find that will help to push the conversations, one, in our own communities? Because for me, I'm very not interested in talking to anybody else outside. Like, I understand not to limit the movement to what we can do, because a lot of what we can do is actually affected by, like, larger things. But in the sense that what we can do, how can we help to push that message of climate change in our culture?
I think you need to kind of make it personal to you, because everyone is going to find a different part of the climate crisis they're going to identify most with. Like, there's some people who will talk day and night about the fossil fuel industry. I know what kind of all is to do with fossil fuels, but you know what I mean. Like, I talk about fast fashion, and like, people just talk about, where people talk about plastic pollution. And to me, the way, I think it's more so about getting people to care about it. I think that's the hardest part, because people are just kind of like, oh yeah, climate change is happening, whatever. But I think like if you just start, and I think it's kind of, people kind of have that attitude about anti-racism as well. It's like, you know, some people be like, why should I stop shopping fast fashion? It's like, why should I do this anti-racism workshop? Why should we do it? It's not it's not affecting me, so why should I do it? And I think that's about people kind of need to develop that empathy. And it's kind of like, when the way I think about fashion as well is like, if you had to hand make all of your clothes, do you think you'd be sitting here with a room full of 100 dresses? No, you wouldn't. Like, but someone is making these clothes.
Yeah, that's a capitalist mentality in the capitalist society that we've all been so heavily conditioned and entrenched in. And
it's hard to get out of that.
100%. But like you said, it's step by step in figuring out what works for you
and do the best you can. That's just all I say.
And I think, like you said, that toxic message is kind of something that I found quite, because like, I mentioned this on one of the last episodes, but I was in the Green School Committee, do you know what I mean? I was like 10, rapping about climate change and stuff. So I think I made a big change in the grand scheme of things. But I think for me, I found that my love and care for the environment was just shut down by the world. It was kind of like, what's the actual point? Like, I keep doing this thing and this thing and this thing. Like,
I had to take a break after the protest.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, so at what point does it become like, let's all do this, when whatever I do is outdoing this person? I went vegan for a bit, found out that a bunch of there's just always a rebuttal to everything. That's why
you just that's why I decided people do the best you can and do. Yes, we need a bit of like of that uncomfortableness, but you need a healthy amount of doing things outside your comfort zone and doing things that are inside your comfort zone. Because for me, that protest, I did a 180. I didn't want to hear the word activism. If you kind of looked at my Instagram from October 2021, and I've only started to get back on in a very good mental space the past couple of months, but that kind of year 2022, like, it was very up and down for me. I didn't know what to do. Even my friends talked to me about it. Like, one of my best friends said, like, Angel, this time last year you were in such a rut, and that rut was, I don't want to create content, or I need to create content, but I didn't feel passionate about anything because of that protest that was absolutely awful for me. And that's why I'd always say to people, listen to your mind and body if you feel like something isn't right. I just did a complete 180. Didn't want to hear the word environmentalism because I felt very disconnected from the community, and didn't want to hear the word activism, didn't want to hear the word climate change. I just didn't want to do, and then it kind of shut down the anti-racism part as well, because mentally I just wasn't doing well. And you kind of need to be in a relatively 100%. Okay headspace to talk about the stuff that's very personal to you. So that's why I just tell people, do the best you can, and you need a healthy amount of being inside your comfort zone as well as being outside your comfort. Because I do stuff that's uncomfortable to me, like, all the time. Like, I'll do like talks, like, and speeches and stuff. Like, the other day I did a keynote speech for Amnesty International, their UK students. And that was such, like, I really wanted to do it, and like, I thought it was amazing, but like, sometimes I can still get a bit of like speaker's anxiety. So that's my part of doing something uncomfortable for the greater good. Like, that's going to benefit other people, but you really need to be careful with the extremes of that. I'm not feeling too pressured, because the only reason I did that protest was because I felt like I had to. I don't think anyone should ever be made to feel like they have to.
And it's low-key like, virtual signaling? Yeah. Like a lot of the times, like, people will be so tunnel vision in what they're doing and not understanding that some of what they're, like, if you look outside of that, you're actually counteracting some of your actions in the way that you're doing things.
Exactly, because then I had to stop a lot of my work. Like, I could have continued the anti-racism conversation. I could have continued doing everything I was doing and making a big positive change. But because of that, I completely shut down. So I had to basically stop working for a few months.
But sometimes that helps you to reevaluate your own values and the way you navigate and stuff.
I'm in a completely different place now, but I'm at a great place now for my work. So I say everything happens for a reason. And though at the time I couldn't see it, now where I'm at, and like, even things like creating more of a focus on wellness, something I hadn't heard anyone in the activist community kind of do before. The fact that I can, because I had that experience and I'm doing it now, I'm like, okay, everything happens for a reason. This is the journey I'm on now. This is what I'm going to do. So,
and I think that's really important. Like, definitely even jumping into the wellness and once again bringing it into our community, into intersectionality type thing. So, like, a couple of years ago, I was running this page called Wellnessa, and
you still have it?
I think it's still live, but I don't really post on it. And I found that, and it was during when I was going vegan, like 2017, 2018. And I found like a lot of this was not culturally relevant to me. Like, people were talking about chickpeas and lentils and stuff, and I'm like, bro, like, where's the Maggie and the like pepper soup and stuff like that? And it's trying to, like, once again finding a way to make things culturally relevant, because I think if you're watching this, if you're listening and you don't really understand why it's important, because in the grand scheme of things, right, we don't want to make everything race, but everything is race.
Everything is race.
Right? But if we're talking about making a global change, then everybody has to be on board.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it's just white people doing activism or whatever their way, and what their actions is actually being counteracted in another part of the world, that's not going to work. But then we also need people in every community to understand this change, right?
Yeah.
But to make things relevant to someone, it has to be like familiar to them. So if you're giving me a booklet on how to go vegan and it's about meals I was never going to eat anyway, it's not making sense. Do you know what I mean? And understanding even just fitness as like I've seen a couple of pages now, like weighing pounded jam and all of these things, and they need to stop that, because I don't need to know how many calories is in pounded jam. So one thing you've started doing is the cold water swimming, and talking about mental health and how that relates to our community. Swimming is a big one, because I think there's a lot of societal and what's the word I'm looking for? Generational trauma related to swimming for a lot of Black people, whether indirectly and directly if you're of African descent or in the US somewhere. How has that journey been for you?
For me, the cold water swimming, I mean, I was always a swimmer growing up, so I've never been, I know there's that whole thing, it's like all Black people can't swim and all this stuff, and I actually do know a lot of Black people that can't swim, but that's not the point. I was always a swimmer growing up, like I'd go to swimming galas and everything, I did that for years, so I've always been a strong swimmer, and the cold water swimming was actually brought to me by like one of my best friends. She was kind of we were both going through a mental health crisis at the start of January 2022. And she first went for a cold water dip and told me how great it was for anxiety and stuff. And I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to start doing it. So then I kind of, anything I do, I always relate it back to race. Like I know everyone says like race is in everything, but to me, everything.
It is. If that's a resource that can help for anxiety, it goes back to the fact that we don't really talk about mental health in our society. If anxiety is a thing that's not talked about and here's a solution for it, granted it's a bit extreme, even me, I'll try find other solutions for anxiety. But if it's something, do you know what I mean? Like if it was something that I was willing to do or try, then why not speak up about it? Why not give me the opportunity to say yes or no to this thing?
I think it's about giving people the tools as well, because like in the Black community, mental health isn't talked about enough. And I think the past couple of years it's starting to get a little bit better. But just within the Black community, especially like Black women as well, you kind of have that strong Black woman trope that's kind of like thrown about. And for me, I was someone that was directly affected by that, feeling like I couldn't talk to other people about my problems, that I had to be like a carer for other people. A lot of the times I've put my feelings, my emotions to the side to be able to care for other people. And it's kind of something I'm doing a wee bit of research on now, about how like there's apparently, one of my friends was telling me she's a social worker, and they were talking about it in their class, like she's in uni for doing social work, and they were talking about in their class about how there's like the token Black therapist, and in a lot of TV shows and movies, like where there's no diversity anywhere else, but there's always a Black therapist. And it's basically like this thing, this subconscious thing, or not subconscious, it's kind of this like societal thing that like Black women have to be the carers of other people, and like we're not allowed to have our own problems. And so especially if like not only like in the Black community is talking about mental health difficult, but then you also have these stereotypes that are placed. Yeah, so it's kind of like not only did me personally feel like I couldn't talk about my mental health or feel like I had any mental health problems, but also society was kind of telling me like you're not meant to have mental health problems, or if you do, put it to the side. Help us.
And it's so funny because I bought a book during lockdown called Black Feminism, and they talk about that in the sense where in America there's multiple conflicting portrayals of Black women, but the main ones is Black women as like the carer, but also Black women not as women. So it's quite conflicting in the sense that if I'm not seen as feminine and seen as a woman at all, why is it like in slavery days, there was always that nanny, right? And back to what you're talking about, like the nanny would take care of the kids, but the nanny also had a really close relationship with the mother or the father in the house, where the white family members most of the times didn't talk to each other, but they always felt comfortable talking to the nanny. Where it's back to what you're saying in the sense that you're seen as this kind of like bubbly Black woman, most of the time old, really bad haircut, who's always in the kitchen, always being talked to, like, do you know what I mean? Always kind of having this loving aura about her, but also living in the community. Once you step out of that house and go to maybe the bigger family members or whatever, you're now seen as not even feminine at all.
Yeah.
You're now seen as you might not, you can't even have your own children. Like, that's what they put. You can't have your own children to take care of ours.
Yeah.
Right. And it's this notion of trying to fight the two of those. But I completely understand where you're coming from. But sorry, go ahead with the mental health.
Well, I think because of kind of that, I think it just means a lot of Black people kind of feel disconnected to mental health awareness and also just like wellness as well. So just through kind of my own journey with the cold water swimming and like talking about how great that is for my anxiety, but also acknowledging the fact that like I feel very comfortable like going on my Instagram and talking about this stuff and trying to build that community. And like I feel very comfortable with like trying new things, I guess, because I've had to kind of go through majority of my life kind of having to do these things on my own and just make myself aware of them. Like I didn't realize like there's a lot of people out there that because they feel disconnected to something, they just won't try it.
Yeah.
So because Black people feel, or because like especially like Black women feel disconnected from talking about anxiety, like that means they're not going to maybe actively put themselves in the space to combat it, if that makes any sense. So kind of the reason why I kind of have just started to be more vocal about wellness and stuff is to try to connect more Black people to that wellness space. And
how's
as well,
the reception been
great.
from Black people?
Yeah, no, it's been really good. And like like majority would be like Black women, especially like Black women from like maybe in Belfast, because there isn't that many of us. Which now I'm like, I really need to create some sort of community for us, or like a little hub, because I just get loads of them in my messages, and I'm just like replying to them. And I'm like, we should really get like a little group chat together or something. But just because like I always say, like, I know we spoke about this earlier, but about that imposter syndrome, and like sometimes I would have imposter syndrome, but I think everyone has a story to tell. My story and like what I do, what I talk about, it's all, I always, no matter what the title of the panel is or whatever, I always talk about myself. I always relate it back to me because it's very personal to me. There's certain things to do with anti-racism and stuff that I can't identify with. There's only so much I can talk about colorism and how, because the colorism hasn't, it's only benefited me, if that makes any sense, in certain environments. So I'm not going to go on a panel where talking about how bad colorism and stuff is, because that's just not my area. It's not for me to speak up in that space. And I think it's just identifying, like, especially the wellness side of it, because that's something that I've directly experienced and experienced it as a Black woman. I'm going to talk about it because a lot of women just don't feel like they can. So it's kind of giving that voice to people that feel like they don't have one, and hopefully helping people be able to combat it as well. So I kind of, it's more so in the past couple months I've been a lot more vocal about it, because I was kind of got into the cold water swimming when I was at a bad place mentally, and usually I don't like talking about how I'm doing mentally at that current moment, because that just, I could talk about it maybe 5 months down the line or a couple months down the line, or just when I feel ready, but I'll never really talk about, if I'm going through a hard time, I don't talk about it at the time. I'll talk about it like a few months later. And I kind of went through a lot of stuff in 2022. I went to India in August.
I was actually, there's two places I wanted to go next, and I wanted you to choose whether you want to talk about India or you want to talk about modeling. So you can figure out which one you'd rather
I'll talk about India.
Okay.
Since we're on like the wellness thing. So I went to India in the hopes that it was going to be this like really enlightening.
What did you go to India for people who don't know?
It was for my yoga teacher training, and I'd got into hot yoga 2021, November 2021. I got into hot yoga, really enjoyed it. Again, very overwhelmingly white space, but to me, I was kind of like, it's Northern Ireland. What can you expect? I can't control who's coming to a hot yoga class, but I thought it was great, and I was like, you know what? I was in a quarter life crisis and was like, you know what? I'm gonna get my yoga teacher training. I really wanted to use it to start doing free yoga classes for like different communities, like vulnerable communities and things like marginalized communities, and I wanted to start using it for good and doing like workshops or whatever, and just trying to make yoga more accessible to other people. But when I went there, I had the worst experience of my entire life. And I experienced a lot of racism in India, which a lot of people are completely shocked by, but I don't think, that's why I don't like using the term people of colour, because there is a hierarchy created even within the people of colour. You have like all races, and there's the hierarchy, white people, whatever. See, within people of colour, there is still a hierarchy that's been created, and right at the very bottom are Black people. So that's not me that's saying that, I'm just saying that is, but you know what I mean? Like there's that hierarchy that's been created. And there's a lot of in certain parts of India, there is a lot of anti-Blackness, which I didn't, my dad tried to warn me about this before I went. I had other people warn me about this before I went, but I just kind of thought that I'm going to a yoga school.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen to
Yeah.
me. It was probably one of the worst things I've ever had to experience in my entire life.
Jeez.
Like, I've experienced racism growing up. I've never in my life have I felt like a second class citizen. Like, I've never felt, I've like been to school and had teachers tell me I'm not capable and things like that. This was like, I was being told to know my place, and it was like I was treated like a second. I was literally being treated. There was animals there, and I was literally being treated worse than the animals. I had the worst experience of my entire life, and clearly yoga is not for me. And I always say everything happens for a reason, but
Even true that you had experience where you kind of contracted an infection or something.
Yeah. So I got an infection. I got a UTI, and I tried to get medication for it, and they refused to give me antibiotics. And at the exact same time, there was another girl, she was white, and she had a UTI as well. And they gave her all these special juices. They gave her antibiotics. If she wanted different food that day for dinner, she was getting different food. Literally, I asked for porridge in the morning because I was like, porridge is the only thing that's sitting with my stomach. I lost a lot of weight the first 2 weeks that I was there because nothing was sitting with my stomach. And I asked for porridge, and I was told I was being difficult. I was told they can't make a separate breakfast for just one person. And basically they just refused to give me, like, literally I was just asking for porridge. And this other, I'm not even exaggerating this, like everything I'm saying is exactly what happened. This is when I realized that I am not on the same level as everyone else. So the white girl, she had a UTI as well. Both had the exact same issue. I was given absolutely nothing, and she was given absolutely everything. There was one time she was literally eating her dinner, and she was like, this is too spicy, like I don't like this. Some guy comes running around the corner and it's like, we can make you something else, like we can make you something else. She's like, no, it's fine. And he was like, no, we can make you something else. She's like, no. He comes back 5 minutes later for a different dinner. And I'm sitting there in the corner of the room like, I can't have porridge for my breakfast. And just like other stuff as well, like them not calling me by my name and like calling me girl as well if they wanted to get my attention. Like snapping their fingers at me to get my attention, or like clapping at me in class instead of like calling my name. Never did that to anybody else. And I was treated really badly.
I can't even imagine what you've paid your money to be at this certain thing, and it's quite unfathomable. Like, even in a society where we know that racism is prevalent and real and exists and stuff, I think that's a completely different ballgame.
It was the type of racism that I experienced over there, it's not the type that I would talk about over here. Like, I'm not getting treated, people don't like, say if people don't like people, or people are being racist, like, they'll treat me differently, but what I experienced in India was just, I don't know how to describe, it was just cruel. Like, I was just like, it was mental and physical abuse, but I would say both, and it was like, really something that could be a lawsuit, but I don't have it in me to even
I think it's
stir that up.
Would take more out of you to get that.
I tried to write an email, because I did try to have a conversation with one of like the teachers about it, but they just gave me the most BS.
Yeah, of course.
So I tried to write an email a few months later, and like my anxiety just was like, I had to stop. Like, I got I think 4 sentences in, and I had to close. I literally closed my computer. I was like, no, you're gonna do this at some point, but not today. No. So that was a hard, but it's so weird because people be like, oh, but you were in India. I'm like, yeah, and like,
what do you mean?
What do you mean? Like, they're like, but it's not white people. I'm like, not only white people can be racist. Like, so
that's another talking point, another teaching,
which I can't even. I don't even think
you don't even know where to start.
I don't know, and I also, even though I had the experience that I had in India, I don't think that makes me fully qualified to talk about it either. Because I think there's a lot of history behind it and a lot of stuff behind it. That's why I don't talk about it in my anti-racism work. I will talk about my experiences that I feel comfortable talking about, and that is my childhood and things like that, growing up as a black girl and everything. But I don't think I can touch on India too much.
Well, sorry that happened to you, bro. But you're back running 10Ks and stuff. So
well, exactly.
Blessed.
Yeah.
I want to end with quite a personal question, even though this whole thing has been personal anyway. What's one experience where you felt that something positive happened to you because you were mixed race, in the sense of a lighter color?
I would say there are certain times, in terms of something positive happening to me, I will say being on social media and talking about what I talk about, I do think it's received better because I'm seen as a more palatable voice. I think that's also because of being from Belfast as well, and also being of lighter skin, I just can kind of notice the different accounts that talk about anti-racism, and maybe I have more followers than someone else who's literally doing either the exact same thing as me or even sometimes better. And on panels as well, there's kind of a lot of panels that I'll speak on, which is I've kind of made a point now to ask what other creators are going to be on this panel, who else is doing this panel with me, because there's been times when it's just been like me and another mixed race girl, and I'm like, the two of us don't need to be here. If we're talking about why we need to have anti-racism in like the advertising industry, because obviously we do ads as content creators, if we're talking about why we need to have like anti-racism in the ad industry or like sustainability and stuff, I'm like, you don't need two mixed race girls here, you don't need two light-skinned girls here, like,
because it almost dilutes the point, right? Like,
it does dilute the point.
Not to say that you don't, like, you're not enough in the sense of speaking about that, but we've seen a sense in colorism, and I know a lot of people in the Black community can feel very passionate, to say the least, about it. But I think sometimes it's kind of like, if you're the extent of what we see as Black, then it's almost there's a whole nother story.
Yeah,
now. Somebody else has to pick it up from another, from darker shade. And start talking from there. You know,
a completely different story is missing, and like a more important story is missing in my opinion as well. So I think it's through them doing them panels, and obviously I get paid to do them panels also, so then that would benefit me and my work. And then because I'm sitting on them panels, more people get to know me, and I'm just like, yes, I think everyone has a story that needs to be shared, and I think everyone's story is important. But if there's someone there that that story is more important, because I always say, like, I don't think white people should be doing anti-racism training. So it's kind of just like, if we're having a conversation about race, you need to kind of have, you can't just stop it there, you know what I mean? And I feel like, I don't know if people do it on purpose, or I think a lot of the times it has to do with who's in the room, and people kind of do look at who's the most palatable voice. And I think I do benefit from that because I'm of lighter skin. So it's quite, it's something that definitely needs to be worked on, but I think a lot of it has to do with the people in the room as well, and who's kind of making these decisions. And unfortunately, being a content creator and the people that are assigning these jobs to people, it's like the advertising industry is like overwhelmingly white. So,
I mean, thanks for being honest about that. Because like I said, like, I completely understand, like, but like, you being mixed race it's not your fault. Like, do you know what I mean? Same way as like anybody being Black is not their fault. So I know, like, I think there was one time on TikTok you were talking about racism, and there were people who basically told you that you were not qualified to talk about
TikTok
it.
was really, no one does it to me on Instagram, but on TikTok it was crazy, and I was like, so many people telling me like, you're not Black, and I was like, I would say like I'm Black, and if you want more context, I'm a Black mixed woman, but like I'll never not, I don't know, some people really disagree with me calling myself Black, and I find that, like,
well, you're both. Well,
I'm both. I think I'm like a mixed Black woman. I don't know, but there are people in the comments that were like she's Black. Let her identify what she was, or if you didn't know, if she wasn't standing there side by side of her mom, like, you wouldn't know this or whatever. But I'm just like, I don't know. I'll leave people up to speculate.
To navigate. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't try to speak on someone else's experiences. That's all I say. I will just speak on my experiences, and I think that's why some people maybe need to chill out a little bit, because I'm not trying to take up. I don't think I'm trying to take up a space where, like, I'm not trying to, I don't know if that makes any sense.
I don't think you're trying to diminish, like, Black voices. And I don't like using the term fully or whatever, but
and I'm just like, let's not divide the
exactly.
I'm fully aware for recognizing and trying to tackle colorism and things like that, and like giving up your space if you feel like there's someone else that can better fulfill it. But I think a lot of it actually divides us rather than brings us together.
But I think, like, you can vocalize that, and even without me asking, you were mentioning these things, and I do think that there's certain mixed race people who are not aware of that, who may have grown up more with more white experiences than you would have. So it's interesting to get, and important to get more context on you, because if you're talking about values, we need to figure out whether we have the same values, and that's pretty much it. Like, and I think that's important for listeners, and important for anybody who's in this space or wanting to delve into this space to understand about you, whether they disagree or agree. That's your truth, right? And I think, just kind of to wrap up, like, thanks so much for having the chats with me. But also, we do have a tradition mainly here, like, of giving people their flowers, like, verbally, but also want to give you your flowers physically, for all the work that you do and everything else that you do. I do think you had a hard time in 2022. Started off.
This year's gonna be my year, and this is really nice. Thank you.
No problem. So it's basically to know. If you don't got any, just post that in it. But it's basically just to let you know and to just encourage everything else that you're doing, and just well done, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Guys, if you're still watching, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and to follow Angel's journey. We will tag everything in the descriptions. Bye.